This is TWiT.
I want to talk about something that just happened yesterday. It was the Samsung Galaxy Unpacked event, where we expected Samsung to announce some new hardware, but maybe also announce some AI stuff. And indeed, that is what we got. Joining us to talk about this event is noted Android authority and a good pal. It's Jason Howell. Welcome to the show, Jason.
How's it going? It's good to see you, Micah. It's good to be back on the other side. It's a little bit surreal, I have to say.
Whoa, the fist bumps are just not the same this way. But
let's see here. I have to... There we go. Yeah.
Right on. Jason, did you watch Samsung Galaxy Unpacked?
Yeah, actually, I very last minute was like, wait a minute. Normally, like when I was working at TWiT, I would be covering this.
Yeah.
Why am I not doing that this morning? So I quickly set everything up and opened up a live stream and watched the entire event.
Oh,
and it
nice.
It was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable.
Good.
I wish I could have been there, to be honest.
Yeah, in person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, at San Jose. So I would love, for the folks who didn't tune into your coverage or our coverage yesterday, now's the opportunity to kind of give people the breakdown of what happened. What was striking to me, and I'm hoping you can explain this,
Sure.
is how we really didn't learn a lot about hardware at this event. And
Totally.
that was sort of a secondary aspect of the show. Is this common for Samsung? Does it always kind of pre-release what hardware it's? I didn't get that. Can you explain it to me?
Well, I mean, the different years that Samsung's had its hardware announcements, it's been very different every time, right? And I think in the last couple of years, we've really hit a point in mobile phones in general, where the differentiation is less and less happening on the hardware side because the cameras are all amazing, the batteries are all very large and, last longer than they ever have. All of these things that used to get us really excited about the hardware when the software was struggling to kind of keep up with it, those things have all been ironed out. And not only ironed out, the price on those things has been pushed down. So we're starting to see these really great hardware advancements in the mid to even in some cases, the lower range phones. And right now, as you know, as well as we all probably do, this current iteration, this current insurgence of artificial intelligence is painting everything. Last year was a huge year for AI. And now every company feels like they've got to have a major AI play in the basket. And not only that, I mean, for mobile phones in general, you're going to see Google doing this a lot as well. They're realizing that they've got to have this stuff on device and that there's a lot of wow factor potential to integrating some of this AI capability into software in a way that actually makes us excited about mobile devices. At least that's what they're banking on. I think that's exactly what you saw from Samsung yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that is precisely what we saw. We saw a huge focus paid on generative AI and how the company was integrating that technology into its devices. But can we have a breakdown maybe of what are the latest Samsung actual devices and price points and that, and then we'll get into the AI stuff.
Totally. Let's get the boring stuff out of the way, the hardware, right? That's literally where we're at now.
Weird.
I know. My, how things change. So, I mean, yeah, and the reason that it's kind of boring is because it is very samey, right? Even the design of these devices looks very similar to last year's devices, save for a few minor updates that people are plotting. But there's the S24, the Galaxy S24, the S24 Plus, the S24 Ultra, and those prices range from $799 on the S24 to $999 starting on the Plus to $1299 starting on the Ultra. And I mean, I've always been just a huge fan. Well, maybe not always, but in the last handful of years, I'd say in the last 5 years especially, when I get my hands on a Galaxy Ultra device, like it's a wow factor. For me, I've noticed that like it really is Samsung going all out and not putting all that money into what some might consider gimmicks as far as like the foldable technology is concerned, but really kind of just going for this is your standard mobile phone on steroids. This year, they've given it a flat display, and that might sound kind of boring if you're outside of the Android ecosystem, but there for a while, the trend was the curved displays. In the beginning, everybody was like, wow, this is different. It's neat. Over time, we realized that made things kind of hard to use, and especially on a display that supports the S Pen as the S24 Ultra does. So it's flat, titanium build, so the build quality is better, a little bit thinner, 5,000 milliamp hour battery, ray tracing capabilities and improvements. So a great gaming device with some extra additional kind of heat dissipation happening underneath the surface. I mean, if you're, $12.99 is a price. That's a high price to pay for a smartphone in the Android world, but you're getting the best of the best, in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, that's, I still think that the fact that they include the stylus or the S Pen is such a cool thing on that Ultra.
Totally.
It's unique, and I appreciate it. So then moving past the boring, which is the hardware, let's get into the AI. What were you expecting the company to announce in terms of AI? Did what you saw surprise you at all, or was it all kind of in line with what you, again, expected? And overall, what stood out as far as the generative AI stuff goes for you?
Yeah, I mean, we knew in advance leading up to this announcement, and I can't remember now off the top of my head if it was rumor or if it was stated by Samsung itself, that there was this thing, this Galaxy AI. And the question there then became, okay, so Samsung's doing what every other company is going to do this year. You're going to see a ton of this year, is really leaning into, all the many ways that we can make your phone better with AI, be it generative, be it, processing your photos, which I didn't even talk about the cameras on the devices. That's where we're at right now. That used to be a really big deal, and now cameras, they're all great. So it's kind of like it's hard to really talk about too many advances there. It's really about the software, and like I'm excited about this moment, and Samsung really dove into some of the things that potentially set it apart. I think the real-time call translation. So if you're on a phone call with someone who doesn't speak the same language as you, there are 13 languages that are on the device that you can do real-time translation. So I talk in my own language, it interprets that and immediately spits that out in the language of the person that I'm talking to, and vice versa. That is like, maybe that's not a feature that everyone has everyday use of. There are certain people that it probably does apply to like that, but like I'm going to Italy this summer, and like that might actually be incredibly handy for me. Not only that, the in-person translation, being able to kind of use your phone as that magical device that allows you to talk to people in other languages, which we have seen before. But again, Samsung needs to show that it's doing the things that we expect out of modern AI. And one of the things that's very good at is transcription. It's very good at providing summaries, which this can do, which this system can do on these phones, as well as that translation. These are things that we, in a very short amount of time, have learned that AI is pretty good at now, going to be amazing at, in the near future. And so Samsung's got to be there. Another thing that stood out for me was Note Assist, because I've realized, especially in the last month, as I'm trying to organize my stuff and really set up, my own podcast business right now, I've got notes everywhere. How do I organize and keep track of these things? Or when I'm talking to someone and I've got all these things that I'm writing down because I don't want to forget it, because that's how my brain works. Note Assist with the S Pen allows you to very quickly kind of organize those notes on the fly. So if I'm just chicken scratching on my screen, it can take that and it can put it into some sort of organization system, key points bulleted out, summarization, all that kind of stuff. These are things that in everyday use are going to be incredibly hopefully effective, but incredibly useful once we use them enough to realize that we can maybe trust them for these tasks. And I think that's kind of the challenge, is getting people to use these, because Samsung has always been so feature rich when it comes to software on their devices, almost to a negative point where it's like, okay, it's noise at this point. But I feel like this is different, and not just for Samsung, for all mobile OSs at this point.
Now, one of the features that they showed continues to be a feature that makes me roll my eyes, and I'm curious about your take on it. The typing into the chat or wherever you want to, and then having the device like change the formality or make it Shakespearean for whatever reason.
Right.
You feel this is gimmick, or is there some use case for this that you could actually see someone using it? It just feels so insincere to me, I guess, but maybe I'm missing something.
No, I completely agree. I do feel like it is insincere. At the same time, I also feel like it's a natural extension of where we're at with kind of spell correct and correction, the kind of grammatical correction that's happening on these devices. It's like, oh, well, we can do that. Well, what about this? You know, it's almost more of a flex than it is, I think, useful. It's like, see, it is capable of taking what you wrote and maybe toning it down. Although there are probably people out there that, are good at writing the important things, but want to make it more approachable. And maybe this is a system to do that. I don't know. I'm probably not going to be using that a whole lot. I much prefer keep things in my own voice and everything, and maybe have light corrections around the side. But I'm sure some people who just absolutely hate reading love seeing that. So we'll see how it is in practice. I will say I doth give you permission to only message me in Shakespearean, but outside of that, I hope no one else uses this with me. Yeah, I hear it. I love to hear your thoughts on the huge Google presence and on stage at this event. It reminded me of when Steve Jobs said, I have a special guest who's going to be joining us, and then sort of gestured over and the screen appeared with Bill Gates sort of calling in live. And I believe it was talking about... yeah, exactly. Looking down on him menacingly. Yeah, I believe it was talking about Office on the Mac at the time. That was the announcement. And I may even remember there were some boos, but... There were definitely some sighs or like guffaws from the audience. For sure. But here with Android and everything, that was not the case. Google being there, and Google got a lot of time on the stage. Tell me your thoughts about that as being someone who's paid attention to this for so long, and then specifically, you can tell us a little bit about what Google actually announced. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and especially because I have paid such close attention to this for so long, it's interesting from the perspective of the fact that I remember a time when Google wanted to be everybody's pal, but Samsung wanted really nothing to do with Google. Samsung, really for a long time was like, okay, yeah, sure, we're using Android, but we're never even going to say the word Android on the stage because we want everyone to think that all of this is ours, muhaha. And then, in the last handful of years, that has really changed. And now, like, I had the same reaction when I was watching yesterday. I was like, all right, Hiroshi's on stage. It's possible he's joined them on the stage, or, someone high up at Google has joined Samsung on the stage of their announcements in the past. I didn't look that up before the showtime to see if he'd been there before. But I do believe that it's notable in combination with a few other things. Hiroshi announced kind of the fact that a lot, if not all of this kind of generative AI that's happening on the device that Samsung's making a really big deal about is coming from Google, right? It's using Google's cloud. It's using Gemini, Google's AI platform. And that's what they're leveraging. So the idea of Samsung kind of creating its own AI and relying upon that, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, that would have been Samsung's strategy. Now Samsung feels comfortable leaning into Google and using their resources to create something hopefully special on the device. Not only that, there is the nearby share quick share kind of merging that happened like a week ago. Nearby share is essentially has been the way on Android that you do kind of person-to-person file exchange. So if we're both in the same room, I can wirelessly send a file from me to you using Nearby Share. Samsung had their own version of that called Quick Share, and it offered a few extra features that Nearby Share didn't. And so if you had a Samsung phone, you kind of had both, and it's really confusing. Well, Google opted to, with this partnership with Samsung, bring in the nomenclature, the quick share, and bypass their own nearby share. And it's just really interesting. Altogether, it really seems like Google is getting closer with Samsung through all this. Makes sense. Samsung's a huge, huge player in the smartphone world, and especially on Android, number one. But what does, I think the question that was kind of ricocheting through my mind as I was watching this yesterday on the stream is like, what does this mean about Google's own ambitions, its own intentions with its hardware? If Samsung is getting closer and closer, what does this mean about the Pixel line? Does it mean anything? Is Google still going to kind of play both fields like they have been for so long? Or is there a kind of a sea change happening where Google's like, you know what? That isn't our strength. Our strength is our partnerships. Our strength is getting our technologies into all these devices. Let's focus on what makes us strong, not the things that distract. That would be a lot of clarity for Google if history is saying something. But that might be a smart move. I'm not sure. And I say that as a Pixel owner. I love the Pixel device, but I do wonder. Yeah,
I think that would be cool to see. I like the Pixel 2. That is not the Pixel 2, but the Pixel also.
Right.
As a primary iOS user, Pixel always made sense to me. But if it means Google maybe, closing down fewer things, shuttering fewer things, killing fewer things because they have more of a focused attention, that would be great. Last thing I'll ask you about is the one ring to rule them all.
The ring.
What do you think? What do you know? What have you heard? And will you be wearing one?
Well, there is not a whole lot to know about this other than it really kind of, sounds similar to like the Aura ring. This is a wearable. That's really all that Samsung revealed, except that they revealed it after spending like 5 minutes talking about some random announcements about Samsung Health and sleep tracking and stuff like that. So if you're to use those as clues for the ring, then it actually, to be quite honest, it actually starts to make more sense to me. And why? Because I have the Pixel Watch 2. It does sleep tracking. I never wear it for sleep tracking because I hate wearing a big honking thing on my wrist when I sleep. But would I wear a ring if it could do a lot of that stuff? It's a smaller kind of, I was going to say footprint, but fingerprint. And, if it does some of this stuff, then I might be more inclined to do it. Not only that, we were just talking about AI, and this right now, we're starting to see the early stages of companies like the Humane AI pin that are thinking about wearables that can integrate AI, the interesting, fun, and useful things that we're probably going to see on smartphones in different form factors that are smaller, miniaturized, different, don't occupy so much physical space, but still give us the benefit of that. And maybe the Galaxy Ring is a step towards that direction. I'd be really surprised if it hits on all those points right out of the gate, but maybe this is a first step for that.
Nice. Well, Jason Howell, thank you so much for joining me this week.
You bet. Anytime.
If folks want to keep up with what you're doing online, if you have anything you want to plug, now's the time to do that.
Well, today's a pretty big day because I just launched a new show with Jeff Jarvis called AI Inside. When I was working at TWiT, we were workshopping this show behind the Club TWiT walls for probably about 5 months. And we're launching it officially. It starts next Wednesday, which is that January 24th? I should have that memorized. Anyways, just go to aiinside.show. We do have a Patreon, patreon.com/AI Inside Show. But yeah, I am thrilled to do a show with Jeff and to get to hang out with him every week and talk about artificial intelligence. And I'm thrilled to hop on with you today. Thank you, Mikah. It was fun hanging out with you.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Good to see you. Good to hang out with you. Good to chat, and great analysis and coverage of Samsung Galaxy Unpacked. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mikah. We'll see y'all real soon.
Thanks so much for watching this little chunk of Tech News Weekly. If you'd like to get the full episode, well, head over to twit.tv/TNW. There you'll find buttons you can click or tap to subscribe to the entire show in audio and video formats. Or just look in the description. We've got links down there as well.